I'm Ella Miller, 30 years old, a marketing executive living in Chicago. Family dinners were never my thing, especially after my mum passed away. But this particular night at Maison de Ray changed everything. When my stepbrother Jackson moved my plate aside, saying this table is for family, I didn't cause a scene, I just smiled quietly. What happened when the $2,900 bill arrived? Well, that's when everyone learned exactly who I am. If you're watching this from a place where family isn't what it should be, hit that subscribe button. Trust me, what happened next will make you realize your worth. Growing up, I thought I knew what family meant. My world shattered when I lost my mum to cancer when I was just 10 years old. She was my everything, my best friend, my confidant. We would bake cookies together every Sunday, and she would tell me stories about her childhood, while the sweet aroma filled our small home. Her absence left a gaping hole in both my heart and our house. My father, David Miller, was devastated. For almost 2 years, he moved through life like a ghost, barely present, even when he was physically there. I would often find him staring at Mum's photos late at night, a glass of whiskey in his hand. During those 2 years, it was mostly just Dad and me figuring out how to exist in a world without her. We created a fragile routine, eating takeout most nights and speaking little, both afraid that mentioning Mum would break the delicate peace we had established. Then Amanda walked into our lives. Dad met her at a company event, and suddenly he was smiling again. She was beautiful, confident, and seemed to breathe life back into him. I was 12 when he introduced us, and I remember feeling both hopeful and terrified. Amanda had 2 children of her own, Jackson, who was 14, and Sophie, who was 11 at the time. "This is going to be wonderful, Ella," my dad said, his eyes bright with hope for the first time in years. "We're going to be a family again." Those words meant everything to me. I spent nights dreaming about having siblings, imagining us staying up late, telling secrets, defending each other at school, and creating new family traditions together. I even decorated a welcome card for them before they moved in, spending hours making it perfect. The reality was nothing like my dreams. From the first day Amanda and her kids moved in, there was an invisible line drawn in our house. It wasn't anything I could point to specifically at first, just a feeling that I was somehow on the outside looking in. The first family photo should have been a warning sign. Amanda arranged us on the couch, placing Jackson and Sophie directly next to Dad with her in the center. I was positioned slightly off to the side, almost as an afterthought. When the photos were developed, I noticed how I seemed to be physically separated from the rest of them, a visual representation of what I was beginning to feel emotionally. "Oh, you're just being sensitive," Dad said when I mentioned it. "Amanda is trying her best to make this work for all of us." Christmas that year made things clearer. I watched as Sophie unwrapped a brand new iPhone, while Jackson got the expensive gaming console he'd been asking for. My gift from Amanda and Dad was a generic sweater from the mall. It wasn't that I wanted expensive things, but the disparity was impossible to ignore. "Budget was tight this year, pumpkin," Dad explained later, though I had seen the credit card bills when collecting the mail. Nothing had been tight about their shopping for the other kids. As the years passed, the pattern only solidified. When planning family vacations, my preferences were rarely considered. "Jackson gets seasick, so we can't go on a cruise," Amanda would say. When I suggested it, though we always seemed able to accommodate Sophie's desire to visit expensive resorts. For my 16th birthday, I received a small family dinner at home, while Jackson's 16th had been celebrated with a rented venue and DJ. Sophie's Sweet 16 the following year featured a professional photographer and custom cake. "Your father and I thought you would prefer something more intimate," Amanda explained. "You've always been so shy and private." I wasn't shy. I had simply learnt to be quiet because speaking up rarely made a difference. Dad worked longer hours as time went on, his marketing firm demanding more of his time. In his absence, the divide grew deeper. Amanda never said anything overtly cruel, but her preference for her biological children was evident in countless small ways. She would remember their favorite foods but serve meals I disliked. She attended all their school events, but often had conflicts with mine. She proudly displayed their achievements, but rarely acknowledged mine. I tried so hard to be the perfect stepdaughter. I helped with chores without being asked, maintained excellent grades, and never caused problems. I thought if I could just be good enough, Amanda would accept me as her own. "I wish Ella was more like you," I overheard her telling Sophie once. "You have such a bubbly personality. She's so reserved." By the time I was preparing for college, I had accepted my place as the outsider. What hurt most wasn't Amanda's subtle exclusion, but Dad's gradual emotional distance. The man who had once been my whole world had been absorbed into his new family, leaving less and less room for me. I applied to colleges far from home, craving distance and a fresh start. When I was accepted to Northwestern University on a partial scholarship, Dad seemed proud but also slightly relieved. "This is a great opportunity for you to spread your wings," he said. What went unsaid was that it was also an opportunity for them to be a family without the complication of me. The day I moved into my dorm room was the first time I felt like I could breathe freely in years. My roommate Katie was from California and knew nothing about my family dynamics. To her, I was just Ella, not the awkward stepchild who didn't quite fit. "Your family seems intense," she commented after meeting them briefly during move-in. "You don't really look like any of them." "I take after my mum," I replied, feeling a strange mix of sadness and relief that someone had noticed what had been true all along. I didn't belong with them, and now I had the chance to build something new for myself. College became my sanctuary, a place where I could reinvent myself away from the shadow of my stepfamily. I worked multiple jobs to cover what my partial scholarship didn't determine to stand on my own 2 feet. Weekends were spent waiting tables at a local diner and evenings working at the campus library. Between classes, work, and studying, I barely had time to think about home, which was exactly what I needed. My marketing classes quickly became my favorite. There was something deeply satisfying about understanding what motivated people, what made them connect with certain messages while ignoring others. Perhaps my years of observing family dynamics from the outside had given me a unique perspective on human behavior. "You have a natural talent for this," my intro to marketing professor told me after I presented my first campaign project. "You see angles others miss." Those words stayed with me, becoming a lifeline when doubts crept in. If I could understand and influence strangers through marketing, maybe there was value in my perspective after all. By junior year, I had made a small circle of friends who accepted me completely. We would gather in our tiny apartments, sharing cheap wine and honest conversations about our dreams and fears. With them, I never had to wonder if I belonged. To Ella, my friend Ryan toasted on my 21st birthday, who never takes crap from anyone and always has our backs. Their version of me was so different from how I saw myself with my family. With them, I was strong, valued, even admired. The contradiction was startling. My breakthrough came during a summer internship at Greenleaf Marketing, a mid-sized agency in Chicago. I was assigned to assist on a struggling campaign for an organic food delivery service. After observing for a week, I noticed the campaign was targeting general health-conscious consumers rather than the specific demographic who would actually use such a service. "I have some thoughts," I nervously told Barbara, my supervisor, staying late one evening to show her my alternative approach. Barbara was a marketing veteran with sharp eyes and sharper instincts. She reviewed my work in silence, her expression unreadable. "This is good," she finally said. "Actually, this is better than good. This is exactly what the client needs." She presented my ideas at the next client meeting, giving me full credit. When the campaign launched with my strategy and exceeded all targets, Barbara took me to lunch. "You're wasted as an intern," she said bluntly. "When you graduate next year, come see me. I want you on my team permanently." That offer changed everything. After graduation, while most of my classmates were sending out dozens of resumes and facing rejection, I had a position waiting for me at one of Chicago's respected agencies. My starting salary was modest, but more money than I'd ever had access to. I rented a small studio apartment in a decent neighborhood and furnished it piece by piece, creating the first space that was truly mine. Work became my identity. I arrived early, stayed late, and volunteered for the challenging accounts nobody wanted. Within 18 months, I had been promoted twice. You have an uncanny ability to get inside the consumer's mind. My performance review noted, "Your campaigns don't just sell products, they create emotional connections." I wondered sometimes if my success came from spending my teenage years studying what made people feel included or excluded, worthy or worthless. All those painful observations had become valuable professional insights. As my reputation grew, so did my confidence. I built an impressive portfolio, working on campaigns for everything from luxury watches to grocery store chains. My specialty became turning around, struggling brands by finding their authentic voice and connection to consumers. Barbara, now the creative director, became both mentor and friend. She pushed me to take risks in my campaigns and in my career. "Apply for the Marketer Under 30 award," she urged when I was 27. "Your Rebuild Hope campaign for disaster relief was the best work this agency has seen in years." When I won, the recognition opened even more doors. Competitors tried to poach me with impressive offers, but I stayed loyal to Greenleaf, who responded with a substantial raise and the title of Senior Marketing Strategist. Financial success followed professional recognition. I moved from my studio to a one-bedroom apartment with a view of the Chicago skyline. For the first time, I could afford quality furniture instead of second-hand pieces, designer clothes instead of fast fashion, and occasional fine dining instead of ramen noodles. On my 28th birthday, I made my first major investment, purchasing a condominium in a recently renovated building downtown. The day I signed the mortgage papers, I felt a surge of pride so intense it brought tears to my eyes. "To building your own foundation," the real estate agent said, handing me the keys. That phrase stuck with me. I was building my own foundation, creating security for myself without depending on anyone else. The scared girl who had once tried desperately to belong in her stepfamily's home now owned her own piece of Chicago. Throughout these years, I maintained minimal contact with my family. Holiday visits became shorter and less frequent. Dad would call occasionally, our conversations pleasant but superficial. He knew I worked in marketing like him, but showed little interest in the details of my career. Amanda would send generic birthday cards. Jackson and Sophie, both still living at home, well into their 20s, and working jobs arranged through Amanda's connections, rarely acknowledged me at all. "They're asking if you're coming home for Christmas," Dad mentioned during one of our calls. "I have a major campaign launching in January," I replied, which was true but not the whole truth. The thought of sitting through another family dinner where I felt invisible was simply too painful to contemplate. "We miss you," he said, though his tone lacked conviction. I had built a life they knew nothing about. They didn't know I had been featured in Marketing Weekly or that I had my own condo. They didn't know about my close friendships or my growing investment portfolio. They didn't know I had finally found places and people that made me feel seen and valued. And strangely, despite all my success, a part of me still craved their approval. That realization frustrated me, but my therapist Taylor, who I'd been seeing for 2 years, helped me understand it. "The need for parental acceptance is deeply ingrained," she explained. "It doesn't make you weak, Ella. It makes you human." I was working on accepting that truth when Sophie's unexpected call came through, setting in motion the dinner that would finally change everything. The call from Sophie came on a Wednesday afternoon, interrupting my prep for an important client meeting. Seeing her name on my phone screen was so unexpected that I almost didn't answer. We hadn't spoken in over 6 months, not since a tense Easter dinner where Amanda had spent the entire time discussing Jackson's promising entry-level position at his girlfriend's father's company. "Ella, are you there?" Sophie's voice sounded unusually bright when I finally picked up. "Hey Sophie, this is a surprise," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "We're having a super important family dinner next Friday at Maison Doré," she announced without preamble. "Everyone needs to be there. Dad said to call you." Maison Doré was one of Chicago's most exclusive French restaurants, the kind of place where reservations were needed months in advance unless you had connections. It seemed an unusual choice for a family that typically celebrated at chain restaurants near their suburban home. "What's the occasion?" I asked, curiosity getting the better of me. "I can't say yet. It's a big announcement. Just be there at 7, okay?" She paused. It would mean a lot to me. That last sentence caught me off guard. Sophie rarely expressed any personal desire for my presence. Despite being close in age, we had never developed the sisterly relationship I had once hoped for. "I'll check my calendar," I said cautiously. "Great, gotta run. Bye." After hanging up, I sat at my desk feeling unsettled. My instinct was to decline to protect myself from another evening of subtle exclusion, but something about Sophie's tone made me curious. What announcement could be important enough to warrant such an expensive venue? And the insistence that everyone attend that evening, I called Taylor to process my conflicting feelings. "What do you think she's announcing?" I asked after explaining the situation. "Could be an engagement, pregnancy, job change move," Taylor suggested. "The question is, do you want to be there for it?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to see what's happening in their lives. Another part knows exactly how it will go, how I'll end up feeling invisible again." "What if you approach this differently?" Taylor asked. "What if you go not seeking their approval, but simply as an observer of your own growth, see how far you've come?" The idea was intriguing. Perhaps it was time to face my family not as the person they thought I was, but as the person I had become. "And if it becomes uncomfortable," Taylor added, "you can always leave. You have that power now." That reminder shifted something inside me. I did have power. Now power I hadn't possessed as a teenager desperate to belong. I'll go, I decided, but on my terms. The days before the dinner were filled with a mixture of anxiety and strategic planning. I selected my outfit carefully, ultimately choosing a sleek black dress that spoke of subtle success paired with the Cartier watch I had bought myself after landing the sportswear account that had increased the agency's revenue by 20%. I made an appointment for a blowout at my favorite salon, choosing a sleek, sophisticated style that made me feel confident. My makeup was flawless, but understated, designed to enhance rather than transform. "You look powerful," I told my reflection on Friday evening, trying to channel the assurance I felt in client meetings. Another strategic decision was to drive myself rather than sharing an Uber. Having my own transportation meant having the freedom to leave when I chose another small but significant form of control. Maison Doré was located in a historic building in downtown Chicago, its elegant facade illuminated by subtle lighting. I arrived 20 minutes early, partly from anxiety and partly from habit, always preferring to be the first at any meeting. The maitre d' greeted me with practiced warmth as I entered the marble-floored lobby. "Good evening, madam. Do you have a reservation?" "Yes, though it might be under Miller or possibly Harrington," I said, giving both my father's surname and Amanda's maiden name that Sophie and Jackson used. He checked his tablet, frowning slightly. "I don't see either name for this evening. When was your reservation made?" "I'm not sure," I admitted. "My stepsister arranged it." "Perhaps I could help," interrupted a familiar voice. I turned to see Daniel, the restaurant manager. I had worked with him 6 months earlier on a promotional event for Maison Doré, creating a campaign that had significantly increased their private event bookings. "Ella, wonderful to see you again," Daniel said, approaching with a genuine smile. "Are you joining us for dinner tonight?" "Yes, with my family, but there seems to be a confusion with the reservation." Daniel's expression cleared. "There's no confusion. Your name has been on our VIP list since our collaboration. Let me check." He spoke quietly to the maitre d', who looked at his tablet again and nodded. "Ah, of course. Ms. Miller, we have your table ready. As requested, it's our best location by the windows. Would you like to be seated while you wait for your party?" I felt a small surge of satisfaction. "Yes, that would be perfect." Daniel personally escorted me to an elegantly set table for 6 near the windows overlooking the twinkling city lights. "We've added that special champagne you recommended during our campaign to our permanent menu," he mentioned as I was seated. "It's been quite popular." "I'm glad to hear it," I replied, genuinely pleased. The champagne in question had been from a small women-owned vineyard I'd discovered. Getting it placed in a restaurant of this caliber had been a small personal victory. "Will you be handling the bill this evening?" Daniel asked discreetly. Without thinking much about it, I nodded and handed him my credit card. "You can put everything on this. We're celebrating tonight, apparently." "Excellent. I'll have your server bring waters and our amuse-bouche while you wait. Your usual Perrier with lime." I was touched that he remembered. "Perfect, thank you." As Daniel walked away, I realized what I had just done. I had effectively taken control of the dinner by putting it on my card. It had been an automatic gesture, the same one I made when hosting clients. Only after he left did I consider the implications. This was my family after all, and traditionally my father handled family meal payments. For a brief moment, I considered calling Daniel back to change the arrangement. Then I thought about all the family dinners where my presence had felt like an afterthought, all the times my contributions had been minimized. "No," I whispered to myself. "Let's see how this plays out." I sat at the elegant table sipping my Perrier and watching the entrance, wondering how the evening would unfold with this one significant change I had already made. I watched as my family entered Maison Doré exactly 12 minutes late. Dad looked uncomfortable in his suit, tugging slightly at his collar. Amanda was overdressed as usual, draped in a sequined dress more appropriate for a formal gala than a family dinner. Sophie practically bounced beside a tall, dark-haired man I didn't recognize, while Jackson trailed behind, absorbed in his phone. The maitre d' pointed them in my direction, and I straightened my posture instinctively as they approached. "There you are," Dad said, bending to kiss my cheek. His greeting was warm but distracted his eyes already scanning the opulent restaurant. "This place is certainly something," Amanda commented, at her tone suggesting she was evaluating everything for its price tag. Sophie hurried forward, pulling the unknown man by the hand. "Ella, this is James," she announced, her face flushed with excitement. "My fiancé." So that was the big announcement. I stood to greet them properly, offering James my hand. "It's wonderful to meet you, James, and congratulations to both of you." James had a firm handshake and kind eyes that crinkled when he smiled. "Sophie's told me about you. You work in marketing, right? Before I could answer, Amanda interrupted. Shall we sit? I'm famished and we have so much to discuss. We arranged ourselves around the table with Sophie and James taking center stage. Jackson finally looked up from his phone long enough to give me a cursory nod before sliding into the chair farthest from mine. Dad and Amanda completed the circle with me positioned at what felt like an awkward angle, slightly removed from the main conversation space. Our server approached with professional grace. Good evening, my name is Thomas and I'll be taking care of you tonight. Can I start everyone with drinks while you look at the menus? Champagne all around, Amanda declared. We're celebrating an engagement. Thomas nodded. Excellent choice. We have several champagnes available. Do you have a preference? Before Amanda could respond, Daniel appeared at the table. I recommend the Femme de Terre Rosé Champagne. It's a special addition to our menu and perfect for celebrations. He turned to me with a respectful nod. Ms. Miller, is that acceptable? I noticed my family's confused looks at Daniel's deference to me. The Femme de Terre would be perfect, thank you, Daniel. Very good. Thomas will take your food orders when you're ready. He smiled warmly at the table. And may I extend my congratulations to the happy couple. Sophie beamed, clearly delighted to be the center of attention. Thank you so much. As Daniel departed, Dad turned to me with a quizzical expression. You know the manager here. We've worked together, I replied simply, not elaborating on the extensive campaign I had created for the restaurant group. How nice, Amanda said dismissively, already turning to Sophie. Now tell everyone your news properly. Sophie held up her left hand, displaying a sizable diamond ring. James proposed last weekend at the lake house. We're getting married next June. A chorus of congratulations followed, with Amanda immediately launching into wedding planning mode. I'm thinking the country club for the venue. The gardens there are perfect for a summer wedding. Actually, James interjected politely, we were considering a smaller ceremony, maybe even a destination wedding. Amanda's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Oh, but darling, you'll want all your family and friends there. A proper wedding is so important. I watched this exchange with interest, noting how quickly Amanda had taken control of Sophie's announcement. Some dynamics never changed. The champagne arrived and Thomas poured it expertly into delicate flutes. Are we ready to order, or would you like more time with the menus? We ordered a variety of appetizers to share, followed by individual entrees. I chose the duck confit, while James and I seemed to be the only ones who didn't balk at the prices. Goodness, Amanda murmured to Dad. $78 for fish. As the appetizers arrived, the conversation centered entirely around Sophie and James. How they met at a friend's birthday party 2 years ago. Their plans to look for a house in the suburbs. James's job as an architectural engineer. I listened and nodded at appropriate intervals, occasionally asking a question that was either ignored or quickly redirected. It was a familiar pattern, one I had experienced at countless family gatherings before. Ella, you're so quiet, Dad commented during a lull in the conversation. How's work going? Before I could answer, Jackson interrupted. The table's getting crowded with all these plates. Thomas, can we get another table pulled up alongside? Thomas glanced around. The restaurant is fully booked tonight, sir, but I can rearrange some things to make more space. Or we could just move some things around, Jackson suggested, already reaching across to push my bread plate and water glass closer to me, effectively shrinking my place setting. This table is for family, he added with a laugh that didn't quite reach his eyes, shifting my plate further to the side to make room for a large platter of appetizers. There was an uncomfortable pause. I felt a familiar tightness in my chest, the same sensation I'd experienced countless times when subtly excluded from family activities or conversations. Dad cleared his throat but said nothing. Sophie looked momentarily embarrassed, but quickly became distracted when James whispered something in her ear. Amanda busied herself with rearranging the appetizer plates, acting as if nothing unusual had occurred. For a moment, I considered my options. I could confront Jackson's rudeness directly, creating a scene that would undoubtedly be labeled as Ella being dramatic. I could excuse myself and leave, which would only reinforce their perception of me as oversensitive and not truly part of the family. Or I could stay, observe, and perhaps for the first time fully accept what I had always known, but tried to deny in their eyes I would always be peripheral, the not-quite daughter, the almost sister. The duck liver pâté is excellent, I said calmly, reaching for a small portion. James, you should try it. It's one of their specialties. James seemed to catch the undercurrent of tension and gave me a grateful look for the conversational lifeline. I've never had it before, but I'm game. The dinner continued with Sophie describing her ideal wedding dress in minute detail, while Amanda offered suggestions that seemed more aligned with her own taste than Sophie's. Jackson dominated any discussion of finances, speaking with unearned authority about investment strategies, while occasionally checking stock prices on his phone. Dad mostly listened, offering the occasional comment or question. What struck me most was how little had changed in the family dynamic, despite the years that had passed. The same patterns of who spoke, who was heard, and who was marginalized remained firmly in place. As the main courses arrived, I excused myself to use the restroom, needing a moment of space. In the elegant powder room, I stared at my reflection under the flattering lighting. "You are not that scared girl anymore," I whispered to myself. "You have built something real on your own." I texted Taylor quickly. "Having dinner with family. The usual dynamics are in full force." Jackson just literally pushed my plate aside, saying, "This table is for family." Her response came quickly. "Remember that their perception of you isn't your reality. You know who you are now." Those words steadied me. I refreshed my lipstick, squared my shoulders, and returned to the table with renewed resolve. The conversation had moved on to wedding venues, with Amanda pushing hard for the country club, while Sophie seemed increasingly uncertain. "What about you, Ella?" James asked suddenly. "Sophie mentioned you're good with events. Any suggestions for unique wedding venues?" The question caught everyone by surprise, including me. Before anyone could intercept, I responded directly to James. Chicago has some amazing historical buildings that make stunning venues. The Cultural Center has this beautiful Tiffany dome that photographs like a dream, and there's a renovated industrial space in the West Loop that offers a more modern aesthetic with great city views. James nodded with genuine interest. "That sounds more our style, doesn't it, Soph?" Sophie looked conflicted, caught between her fiancé's enthusiasm and her mother's obvious disapproval. "Well," Amanda interjected, "those places book up years in advance and cost a fortune. The country club already knows us." I simply smiled and took a sip of my water. "Just a suggestion." As dessert menus were distributed, I quietly ordered the Grand Marnier soufflé, the most expensive item at $48. It required additional preparation time and was typically ordered at the beginning of the meal, but Daniel had stopped by again and assured me the chef would accommodate the request. "For our VIP," he added with a wink that did not go unnoticed by my family. "You seem to have special treatment here," Dad commented after Daniel left. I shrugged lightly. Good service is worth recognizing. The desserts arrived to appreciative murmurs, with my soufflé drawing particular attention with its perfect golden dome and the server's theatrical pour of warm Grand Marnier cream into the center. "That looks amazing," Sophie said, eyeing my dessert enviously. "Would you like to try some?" I offered genuinely. She hesitated, glancing at Amanda, who gave an almost imperceptible shake of her head. "No, that's okay. Mine is good too." That small exchange crystallized 20 years of family dynamics. Even in adulthood, Sophie still looked to her mother for permission, and Amanda still exerted control through subtle cues. I had long ago stopped seeking that approval, which perhaps explained why I had always been viewed as difficult. As we finished our desserts, I felt a strange sense of clarity and peace. I had come tonight seeking something, perhaps validation or inclusion, but what I found instead was confirmation that I had made the right choice in building my own life separate from them. As the evening wound down, everyone sat back with satisfied expressions, having enjoyed one of the finest meals Chicago had to offer. Coffee and digestives had been served, and the conversation had meandered from wedding plans to Jackson's latest golf score to Amanda's garden club drama. "I should speak with the manager about dividing the check," Dad said, looking around for Thomas or Daniel. "With such a special occasion, Amanda and I would like to cover it." "Oh, that's not necessary," Sophie chimed in. "James and I can pay our share." "Nonsense," Amanda declared. "Your father and I will handle it. It's our treat to celebrate your engagement." Jackson leaned back in his chair. "Maybe we should split it 4 ways between the adults. Seems fair." I noticed how everyone naturally excluded me from this discussion, assuming I would pay only for myself or perhaps nothing at all. It was such a familiar pattern that in the past I might not have even noticed it. Thomas approached the table with impeccable timing, carrying a sleek leather folder. "I hope everything was to your satisfaction this evening." "Wonderful, thank you," Dad replied, reaching for the folder. "We'll need to divide the check." Thomas gave a small apologetic smile. "Actually, sir, the bill has already been settled in full." A moment of confusion crossed the table. Dad frowned slightly. "There must be some mistake. We haven't paid yet." "There's no mistake," Thomas explained. "The reservation was made under Miss Miller's name, and she arranged payment at the beginning of the evening." He turned to me with a respectful nod. As always, it was a pleasure to serve you, Miss Miller. 5 pairs of eyes swung toward me with expressions ranging from confusion to disbelief. I maintained a neutral expression, though internally I felt a curious mixture of satisfaction and anxiety. "Ella?" Dad questioned. "You paid for dinner." Before I could respond, Daniel appeared again, carrying what looked like a receipt. "Ms. Miller just wanted to confirm the final amount charged to your card. With the special champagne and additional courses, it came to $2,900 even." He placed the receipt discreetly in front of me. "We applied your usual client discount, of course." The silence that fell over the table was absolute. Sophie's mouth actually dropped open, while Jackson looked as if someone had just spoken in a language he couldn't comprehend. Dad appeared stunned, and Amanda's face had frozen in a grimace that was attempting to be a smile. "Thank you, Daniel. Everything was excellent as always," I said calmly, tucking the receipt into my purse. Daniel beamed. "We're always honored to have you dine with us, and the marketing materials you created for our holiday program are already generating tremendous response." The owner was particularly impressed with the campaign concept. "I'm glad to hear it," I replied. "Please give Jean-Claude my regards." After Daniel departed, the silence continued for several beats too long to be comfortable. Finally, Dad cleared his throat. "Ella, you didn't need to do that. That's a substantial amount." "It's fine, Dad. I wanted to celebrate Sophie's engagement properly." I smiled at my stepsister, who looked utterly bewildered. "But," Amanda began, her voice unusually hesitant. "How did you... I mean, that's very generous, but I can afford it," I stated simply. Jackson snorted. "Right. Unless you've been holding out on us about some secret lottery win." "No lottery needed," I replied evenly. "My position as senior marketing strategist at Greenleaf comes with an appropriate compensation package." "Senior marketing strategist," Dad repeated, looking genuinely surprised. "I thought you were still doing entry-level work there." "I started that way 8 years ago," I explained, feeling a twinge of hurt that he had paid so little attention to my career. "I've been promoted several times since then." "You must be doing well," James commented with genuine warmth, seemingly the only person at the table not struck dumb by the revelation. "I am," I acknowledged. "Greenleaf has been very good to me. In fact, the campaign I created for Maison Doré last year is why Daniel and the staff know me. The restaurant group is one of our clients." Amanda's expression shifted from confusion to calculation. "Well, isn't that lovely? You know we always knew you would do well, didn't we, David?" Ella was always so bright. The blatant revisionism almost made me laugh. "That's not how I remember it, actually." "What do you mean?" Amanda asked, her tone sharpening slightly. I took a measured sip of water, considering how to proceed. This moment, sitting at an elegant table with my family, looking at me with new eyes, felt pivotal. I could smile, accept Amanda's rewriting of history, and let the evening end with surface pleasantries. Or I could finally speak my truth. "I mean that this is the first time anyone at this table except James, who just met me, has expressed any real interest in my career or life." The words came out calmly without the emotion that had always threatened to overflow when I thought about these matters. "That's not true," Dad protested weakly. "We always ask how you're doing when we talk." "When was the last time we had a real conversation, Dad? Not just, 'How's work? Fine, thanks. How's the weather?'" I held his gaze until he looked away, unable to provide an answer. "We've all been busy," Amanda interjected. "Everyone has their own lives. That's just how families work when children grow up." "Is it?" I asked. "Because from what I can see, you're all still very involved in each other's lives. Jackson still lives at home at 32. You and Dad attend all of Sophie's events. The 3 of you vacation together twice a year." Jackson's face reddened. "Some of us value family connection over running away to prove something." "I didn't run away, Jackson. I was pushed to the periphery from the day your mother married my father." "Cow." The truth felt surprisingly freeing to speak aloud. "This table is for family," I quoted back at him. "You've been saying that to me in different ways for 20 years. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Sophie looked close to tears, while Dad wore an expression of dawning horror, as if seeing our family dynamic clearly for the first time. "I always tried to include you," Amanda said defensively. "You were just so different from my children, so closed off." "I was a child who had lost her mother and was trying to find her place in a new family," I replied. "I wasn't closed off. I was waiting to be welcomed in." James reached across the table and briefly touched my hand in a gesture of support that nearly broke my composure. This stranger understood more in one dinner than my family had in 2 decades. We always considered you family, Amanda insisted, though her tone lacked conviction. No, you didn't, I said quietly. But that's okay now. I've built my own life, my own success, my own sense of belonging elsewhere. So this dinner paying this ridiculous bill, that was what revenge, Jackson accused. I shook my head. Not revenge, just a chance to finally be seen for who I am, not who you've decided I am. I stood up, gathering my purse and wrap. Sophie James, congratulations again on your engagement. I wish you both every happiness. Dad stood as well, looking shaken. Ella, please don't leave like this. We should talk about this as a family. We can talk another time, Dad. Tonight was supposed to be about Sophie and James. I gave him a small smile. I'll call you next week. As I turned to leave, Sophie suddenly stood up and hugged me, catching me completely by surprise. Thank you for dinner, she whispered. And I'm sorry, I never realized. I hugged her back briefly. Be happy, Sophie, and maybe choose your wedding venue based on what you and James want, not what your mum expects. Day. With that parting advice, I walked through the restaurant with my head high, nodding goodbye to Daniel and Thomas on my way out. The night air felt crisp and clean as I stepped onto the sidewalk, filling my lungs with it, like a woman surfacing from deep water. For the first time in my adult life, I felt completely unburdened by the weight of seeking approval from people who had never truly seen me. Whatever happened next with my family would happen on new terms with my truth finally spoken and acknowledged. As I walked to the valet stand to retrieve my car, I felt my phone buzz with a text from Taylor. How did it go? I smiled and typed back. I paid a $2,900 dinner bill, told my family the truth, and walked away feeling lighter than I have in 20 years. I think that counts as progress. The drive home from Maison de Rey that night was surreal. Chicago's skyline glittered against the dark sky as if celebrating with me, the familiar buildings looking somehow different just as I felt changed by what had transpired. I drove with the windows down, despite the autumn chill, needing to feel the sharp air on my skin to ground myself in the reality of what had just happened. I had finally spoken my truth after 20 years of silence. I had claimed my place not as the forgotten stepchild, but as a successful woman who had built her own life. The $2,900 dinner bill wasn't about the money, but about visibility. For once, they had been forced to see me clearly. I half expected my phone to explode with angry texts or calls from Amanda or Jackson, perhaps even a disappointed message from Dad. Instead, there was only silence, which felt appropriate. They would need time to process this new version of me that contradicted the narrative they had constructed over the years. When I arrived home at my condo, I kicked off my heels in the entryway and poured myself a small glass of the expensive scotch I kept for special occasions. Standing by my floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, I raised the glass in a silent toast to myself and to my mother, who would have been proud of the woman I had become. The unexpected call came just as I was preparing for bed. An unknown number flashed on my screen, and I almost didn't answer. When I did, I was surprised to hear James's voice. Ella, it's James, Sophie's fiancé. I hope it's okay that I got your number from her phone. Is everything all right? I asked, concerned that something had happened after I left. Yes, well, sort of. He paused. I just wanted to thank you for tonight. Not just for the dinner, though, that was incredibly generous. I meant for speaking up. I sat down on the edge of my bed. I'm not sure your future mother-in-law would agree that was something to thank me for. Okay? He laughed softly. Probably not, but Sophie needed to hear it. We left right after you did, and she's been quiet, really thinking about things, especially about the wedding planning. I hope I didn't ruin her engagement celebration, I said, genuinely concerned. You didn't, he assured me. If anything, you made it more meaningful. Sophie told me on the drive home that she never realized how you'd been treated all these years. She was too caught up in her own world to notice. We were both children when our parents married, I pointed out. It wasn't her responsibility to fix the family dynamic. No, but she's an adult now and she sees it. He paused again. I just wanted you to know that your words landed somewhere, and for what it's worth, I think you're pretty amazing. Standing up for yourself like that took courage. His kindness brought unexpected tears to my eyes. Thank you, James. Sophie's lucky to have found you. I hope we'll get to know each other better, he said sincerely. You're her sister, which makes you family to me too. After we hung up, I sat for a long time reflecting on how a stranger had offered more genuine familial connection in one evening than my stepfamily had in 2 decades. The next morning, I woke to a text from Dad. Can we meet for coffee this weekend, just us? I agreed to Sunday morning at a cafe near my condo. The days between passed in a blur of work commitments and conversations with Taylor about how to approach this meeting with healthy boundaries. Remember, you don't owe him absolution, she cautioned. Listen to what he has to say, but protect your heart. Sunday arrived with perfect fall weather, crisp and sunny. I arrived at the cafe first and chose a table in the corner, giving us privacy for what would likely be a difficult conversation. Dad arrived looking older than I remembered from just days before. He hugged me briefly before sitting down, his expression a mixture of contrition and uncertainty. I didn't know your address, he said after ordering coffee. I realized on the way here that I've never been to your home. It's a condo in River North, I told him. I've owned it for 2 years. He nodded slowly. There's a lot I don't know about your life, isn't there? Yes, I said simply, not rushing to fill the uncomfortable silence that followed. The other night, he finally continued, when you said you were pushed to the periphery, I didn't want to believe it, but I've been thinking about nothing else since then, going back through memories, seeing things differently. He looked up, his eyes red-rimmed. I failed you, Ella. The words I had waited so long to hear landed with less impact than I might have imagined. Perhaps because I had already accepted this truth years ago. Yes, you did, I acknowledged. But I survived it. I built a good life. I can see that now, he said. I convinced myself that you were just independent, that you didn't need the same attention Sophie and Jackson did. It was easier than admitting that I was allowing Amanda to prioritize her children over you. Why did you... I asked the question that had haunted me for years. Why did you let it happen? Dad stared into his coffee. After your mother died, I was broken. Amanda put me back together, or at least I thought she did. I was so grateful, so afraid of losing the stability she brought, that I didn't question how she was integrating our families. He looked up, meeting my eyes directly. It was cowardice, Ella. I was afraid of rocking the boat. And I paid the price for that fear, I said quietly. You did, and I'm so deeply sorry. His voice broke slightly. Watching you walk out of that restaurant the other night, seeing you so confident and successful despite everything, I realized what I'd done. You became this amazing woman without my help, without my guidance. I had other support, I told him. Good friends, mentors who believed in me. I should have been your biggest supporter, he said, regret heavy in his voice. Instead, I was barely present. We talked for over 2 hours, excavating years of misunderstandings and absent parenting. I learned that Amanda had often painted me as difficult and oversensitive when I wasn't present, reinforcing the narrative that I chose to exclude myself from family activities. Dad admitted to accepting this convenient explanation rather than examining the dynamic more closely. What happens now? He asked eventually. I'd like to try to be part of your life, your real life, not just the surface version, but I understand if it's too late. It's not too late, I said, after considering his question carefully. But things need to be different. I won't pretend everything is fine just to keep the peace anymore. And I won't put myself in situations where I'm made to feel less than. That's fair, he nodded. More than fair. And I need you to understand that I have my own life now. Friends who are like family to me, a career that matters to me. I'm not going to suddenly start showing up at every family event pretending the past didn't happen. I understand, he said. Could we start with just us? Maybe a regular lunch or dinner, get to know each other again. I agreed to monthly dinners, a small step toward rebuilding what had been broken for so long. As we prepared to leave, Dad handed me a small gift bag. I found this at the house yesterday. I thought you might want it back. Inside was a small worn teddy bear with a faded pink ribbon around its neck. My breath caught in my throat. It had been my mother's last gift to me before she died, a bear I had cherished and eventually lost during the chaotic years of blending households. Where did you find it? I asked, my composure finally cracking as I held the precious memento. In a box in the attic. Amanda must have packed it away during one of her cleaning sprees. His expression darkened slightly. There were other things of yours in there too, things that should have been kept out, or at least given to you. That small bear represented so much more than just a childhood toy. It was tangible evidence that I had been systematically erased from the physical space of what should have been my home, my belongings deemed less important than others. Thank you for this, I said carefully, tucking the bear back into the bag. It means a lot. In the weeks that followed, other changes unfolded. Sophie called to ask if I would meet her for lunch, a first in our adult relationship. During our meal, she apologized for her blindness to how I had been treated and asked tentatively about my work, seeming genuinely interested in my answers. "James and I found a venue," she mentioned toward the end of our lunch. "That renovated industrial space you mentioned in the West Loop. Mum's not thrilled, but it's what we want." "It will be beautiful," I assured her. "And it's your wedding, not Amanda's." She hesitated before asking her next question. Would you consider being one of my bridesmaids? I know we haven't been close, but I'd like to change that." The invitation surprised me, and I took a moment to consider whether it was genuine or motivated by guilt. Looking at her hopeful expression, I decided to give her the benefit of the doubt. "I'd be honored," I said, and meant it. Jackson remained distant, sending a terse text that read, "Only thanks for dinner." I hadn't expected more, and wasn't hurt by his continued coolness. We had never connected, and forcing a relationship now seemed unnecessary. Amanda called once her voice overly bright, as she suggested a girls' lunch, to catch up properly. I declined, politely explaining that my schedule was particularly full that month. We both understood the subtext. I was no longer available for superficial performances of family harmony. The most profound changes, however, were internal. I felt lighter, more authentic in all areas of my life. At work, I spoke up more confidently in meetings. With friends, I shared vulnerable truths I had previously kept hidden. I even started dating again, after a long period of focusing exclusively on my career, meeting a kind architect named Michael, who listened intently when I spoke, and never made me feel that my thoughts or feelings were inconvenient. 6 months after the dinner at Maison Doré, I invited Dad to my condo for the first time. As he walked through my space, taking in the art I had collected, the comfortable but elegant furniture, and the spectacular view, I watched realization dawn on his face. "You've built a beautiful life, Ella," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm so proud of the woman you've become." "I'm proud too," I replied, "not just of what I've achieved, but of finally learning that I don't need anyone else's approval to know my worth." That night, as we shared a meal at my dining table, I understood that true healing wasn't about forgetting the past or pretending the hurt never happened. It was about acknowledging the pain, speaking truth to it, and then choosing to move forward on your own terms. The scared girl who had once desperately tried to earn her place at the family table had finally created her own table one, where she sat firmly at the center, surrounded by people who saw her clearly and valued her completely. Looking back on that pivotal night at Maison Doré nearly a year later, I'm struck by how a single moment can alter the course of relationships built over decades. That $2,900 dinner bill became the catalyst for honest conversations that were 20 years overdue, forcing everyone, including me, to confront the family dynamic we had all participated in maintaining. The healing process wasn't immediate or linear. There were difficult conversations, occasional backsliding into old patterns, and moments when I questioned whether rebuilding these relationships was worth the emotional effort. But gradually, slowly, things changed. Dad and I established our monthly dinners, which evolved from slightly awkward encounters into genuine opportunities for connection. He made efforts to learn about my work, asking thoughtful questions about campaigns I was developing and celebrating my successes without comparing them to anyone else's. For the first time since my mother died, I felt like I had a parent who saw me clearly. "Your mother would be so proud of you," he told me during our 6th dinner. "She always said you had her determination." Those simple words, acknowledging both my mother's memory and my own strength, meant more than any expensive gift could have. Sophie's wedding approached with the expected flurry of activities. Being included in bridal shopping trips and menu tastings felt strange at first, like wearing clothes that didn't quite fit. Amanda hovered at these events, occasionally slipping into her old habit of speaking over me or dismissing my suggestions, but Sophie had found her voice. "I really like Ella's idea," she would say firmly when it happened. "Let's consider it seriously." The wedding itself, held in the industrial space with soaring ceilings and exposed brick walls, was beautiful in its authenticity. It reflected Sophie and James rather than Amanda's country club aspirations. Standing beside Sophie as a bridesmaid in a dress I had helped choose, I felt a bittersweet combination of joy for her and mourning for the sisterly relationship we could have had all along. During the reception, James's best man raised his glass in a toast. "To families that grow and change, and to the courage it takes to create something new." His eyes met mine across the table, and I knew the words were partly for me. James had become an unexpected ally in this family reconfiguration, often serving as a bridge between old wounds and new possibilities. Not all relationships transformed equally. Jackson maintained a polite distance, acknowledging my presence at family gatherings, but rarely engaging beyond surface pleasantries. I accepted this with equanimity, understanding that not all family connections needed to be close to be respectful. Amanda struggled the most with our new dynamic. Having lost her position as the unquestioned authority on all family matters, she vacillated between overtures of friendship and passive-aggressive comments about my sensitivity. I learned to respond to both with the same calm detachment, no longer seeking her approval or fearing her disapproval. I understand that this is difficult for you. I told her directly when she made a particularly pointed remark about my absence from a family gathering I hadn't been informed about. But I'm no longer available for the role I used to play in this family. The personal growth extended beyond family relationships. My friendship with Taylor deepened from therapist-client to genuine friendship once we concluded our professional relationship. My career continued to flourish with a promotion to creative director that came with both increased responsibility and compensation. Most surprisingly, my relationship with Michael evolved from casual dating to something serious and sustaining. He met my family at Sophie's wedding, observing the complex dynamics with understanding rather than judgment. Families are ecosystems, he commented afterward. Change one element and everything shifts to find a new balance. As an architect, he understood that strong structures required solid foundations and regular maintenance. He approached our relationship with the same careful attention, never assuming that love alone would sustain us without communication and conscious choice. The healing wasn't just about family relationships, but about my relationship with myself. I stopped downplaying my accomplishments or diminishing my needs. I learned to take up space unapologetically, to voice my opinions without first calculating their potential reception, to believe that my presence added value to any table I chose to sit at. This journey taught me that families, whether born or chosen, require honesty to thrive. The superficial peace we had maintained for years through silence and accommodation had prevented any real connection. Only by speaking truth, however uncomfortable, could authentic relationships begin to form. I also learned that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or excusing past hurts. It means acknowledging them fully, understanding their impact, and then choosing to move forward without allowing them to determine your future. Forgiveness is not a gift you give others, it's freedom you grant yourself. The most profound lesson came from realizing that approval from others is never a reliable foundation for self-worth. The validation I had sought from my stepfamily for so long could never fill the space that only self-acceptance could occupy. Today, as I sit in my condo preparing for a dinner party that will include Dad, Sophie, and James, and several of my closest friends, I feel a sense of peace that once seemed impossible. My table is large enough for many people, but I no longer measure my worth by who chooses to sit at it. The frightened girl, who once believed she had to earn her place in her own family, has become a woman who knows her inherent value, who creates spaces where others feel seen and valued too, who understands that family can be both a birthright and a choice. That $2,900 dinner bill, best money I ever spent. Not because it impressed anyone or proved my success, but because it bought something truly priceless, the courage to finally stand in my truth, and the freedom to build a life defined by genuine connection rather than obligation. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family members who couldn't see your worth? Has a single moment ever changed the course of your relationships? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. And if this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to be reminded of their value. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, sometimes the most difficult conversations lead to the most beautiful beginnings.